In this powerful episode of Success is a System, host Mike Greene sits down with Charlie Panayi to unpack his remarkable journey from a North London Greek household to becoming a savvy property investor and business acquirer. Discover the systems, mindset, and strategies that transformed Charlie's life, including how he leveraged mentorship, overcame early challenges, and built a multi-million-pound portfolio before turning 40.
But I'd look at some of the amazing stuff about you, your upbringing, what you've done. I'm particularly impressed because property is a big passion of mine as well. It's an area that you're obviously very passionate, very skilled, very experienced in. So I do want to delve into that as we go through.
People think estate agents are bad. To do a business brokers, wow, it's a whole different level. So I'm sorry, there is good ones out there.
So as I got more and more into property, I did exactly that. Went back 100 years, you went back 200 years, same thing. It shrinks and grows, no different to the share price graph of Apple. You know, trend always upwards, but fuck me, it's up and down like a horse draws. You know, it's unstoppable in that regard.
So I, again, as a kid, realised, wait a minute, my uncle George is really good with money. Stingiest guy I've ever met, but really good with money. So he probably won't watch this, but no one used to want to spend time with him. I was the one who did, because I was like, I want to learn what he knows about this, and this is where it gave me a skill set above any other kid I knew around me.
So how much did you save by the time you were 16?
Oh, more than 20k.
All right, wow.
Yeah, more than 20k. So I was very direct. Like, so then I started,
tight really as a kid.
This is why I was with George. Age gratification is. This is why I was with George all the time, so I could learn how to keep my money.
Welcome to another episode of Success is a System. I'm here today with Charlie Panayi, and we're going to talk all things about Charlie's life. We're going to talk about red brick wealth. We're going to talk about his transition from job to entrepreneur, his life, and all the systems that made Charlie successful. Along the way, it's a voyage of discovery. We never know where we're going. Join us, enjoy. If you do enjoy, like, subscribe, share. Charlie, hello, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And this is the first time we've met, so often I speak to people that I know or know of, and we got introduced, and I found your profile really interesting. Obviously, you're disgustingly young relative to me for the level of success that you've achieved, but that's a great thing. That'll impress a lot of people.
I feel older now, but it's probably wrong to say because I'm only in my mid-30s, but yes.
Do you know, when I was a teenager, I was a punk rocker and green air bondage trousers, all that.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought anyone over 30 must be so old, I'm going to kill myself by the time I'm 30. But so every age feels older till you get there, then it feels young still.
So at the moment, I'm hanging on to 25. I keep telling everyone who knows me I'm 25, and they're like, you're not. I was like, yes, I am.
But, you know, to me, is as long as you stay the mental age, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to live to 100, and the day I don't want to know about it.
So that's it. I'm with you.
But I'd look at some of the amazing stuff about you, your upbringing, what you've done. I'm particularly impressed because property is a big passion of mine as well. It's an area that you're obviously very passionate, very skilled, very experienced in. So I do want to delve into that as we go through. But I always like to start with, tell me who Charlie Panayi is. You know, have you got brothers, sisters? Was it a wealthy upbringing, a poverty upbringing, abusive? Was it lovely and warm and cuddly and nice? Give me a little bit of a flavour of who Charlie Panayi is and where you come from.
So I grew up in a North London Greek household. So if anyone's watched My Big Fat Greek Wedding, that's not exaggerated. That is a Greek upbringing.
Right.
So it's very much like that. So I was in a very loving environment, shall we say, support people, everyone want to know your business, everyone in each other's business. So it was I loved the upbringing. I love the Greek culture. So for me, I always felt lucky. Look, we weren't rich, we weren't poor. I'd say we were very secure growing up. I've got two older brothers, two younger sisters. One of my sisters has died, unfortunately, in 2020, but that's the family. My mum and dad adopted technically another one of my brothers, Leroy, so Jamaican boy that worked for them in the Ridley Road market. So we were just secure. But one thing I did used to remember is we used to go on a holiday every year, whereas my community where I was living, none of my friends really ever did holidays. So I remember feeling lucky. I had a very strict dad, very strict. There was a very clear line. I'm probably relatively autistic, so well, technically probably am, but I don't like labels. So for me, it worked because his line was there, and I wouldn't cross it. My brothers, specifically one of them, wasn't so good at that. So there was a lot of. I'm laughing because it's not a good thing, but there was a lot of physical sort of. I don't know what words to use here, but there was a lot of physical side of things.
Yeah, don't protect any words. I mean, the beauty of the podcast is if you want to swear.
Yeah.
Not for the sake of it, but what we want to do is keep it real, keep it uncensored unless you feel the need to censor it. But just before I go on to that, by the way, you don't realise, but we have something in common. I've got a brother called Leroy as well.
Oh, there you are.
But he's not Jamaican. My stepdad's name was Roy, so my mum thought it'd be good to call him Lee.
Oh, God.
But that's
it's not very Jamaican.
No, that's not. And people always were surprised that who he was because they expected something to look differently.
Oh, fair. Yeah. Well, my friends, until they met, because obviously Leroy is a lot older than me, so I think a lot of people, some when I was young, didn't believe me, and then because of, again, when you're growing up. But yeah, he very much was part of the family when I was. Well, he was in part of the family before I was.
And I'm always interested in motivations and family dynamics. I mean, Greek families, is it normal to have kind of extended family, or why did they adopt? Where did that come from? Do you know?
It's very normal for Greeks to like have any Tom, Dick, or Harry walking in your house. Like, to be honest, growing up, I was never really less than 10 people in my household, like related and non-related. Christmases, again, I don't know if you've ever watched My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but it's such a great movie.
Yeah, no, I have, but it's a long time ago.
I think people watch that and might think it's exaggerated. It is not. The scene where they talk about someone being a vegetarian and it just goes silent. They're like, well, I'll make you lamb. That's how you grow up. You sort of forced things upon yourself growing up. I felt it was a very lucky upbringing because it's very different, and I don't want to alienate myself to the English culture, but it's so different to English culture. And I'm generalising, but most English culture, the parents or grandparents, I've done my bit, it's on to you now. Greeks are never like that. Sometimes annoyingly so, but they're never like that. So there's always an open door. I grew up in a household, like I said, my dad was very strict, but for me it worked. Don't cross that line, otherwise I'm going to get beaten up. That's quite straight for me. That worked for me. Because of the way my brain works. But also what was good about my parents and my family is it was always a room of encouragement. They're never like, one of my aunties was a little bit bossy with their kids, but it was never like, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. If you want to be a toilet cleaner, make sure you're the best version of it. If you're going to clean a floor or be a solicitor or be a lawyer.
Not about hierarchy, it's about work ethic.
And any old Greek man you ever meet in England or Australia or wherever will always tell you they come to the country with £7 or £8. And now look what they've got. And let's be honest, most Greek families have money. And that is not because of their intellect and things like that. It is the work ethic. So it is ingrained in you from a kid. Like, you will work hard, whatever that is you do.
So let's dive into that a little bit then, because, you said you're probably autistic but don't like labels. But, all the paintings, I have many paintings. Many of them are from an autistic artist called Zinski.
I noticed that
he's self-taught, and I helped his brand, if you like, grow from about £100 a painting to £10,000 a painting, and so on. But that was his awesome skill. Many people who are autistic have one. Obsessive is often called is a negative word, but one key focus. It might be maths, it might be so. Did you have a kind of key strength, key skill, or was it more about the socialization element of autism?
So actually, my mum used to worry. She said if I'd live a normal life, because from the young ages, I didn't really used to talk to people. I used to hide under tables to eat. So socially. But I've got a 4-year-old son. He is so like me in energy and certain mannerisms, but opposite in terms of he's confident. I was the opposite. I hid. But coming back to that holiday that I used to have every year, I don't know if I was just super weird. It definitely was the autistic side of me. But I remember from as young as 7 feeling lucky. And I remember thinking, I want this. Like, when I've got a family, if I want to go on holiday tomorrow, because we grew up in a Greek house, like, we're always family orientated. So for me, it's like, when I've got a family, if I want to go on holiday tomorrow, I don't want anyone telling me I can't or I can't afford it. it's a really weird thing as a 7-year-old. So what I started to establish over the course of years from 7 till I didn't really properly go to school until I was probably 11ish.
And where's this?
In London. We went to the Isle of Wight for a couple of years, but back to North London. And I didn't really go to school properly until, like I said, 11ish. I sort of realised, as a very weird thing for a child, for maybe people listening, but I realised, wait a minute, if I want to be financially free, the best skill I need is selling, talking.
Well, let me just interject there, but hold that thought. Firstly, you say it's probably weird for a 7-year-old, or I knew this at 7, or that's normal. It's completely normal.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the sense that, I don't know if you've heard the saying, show me a boy of 7, I'll show you a man. That's not a sexist thing, that's a reality. But it's also founded as a behavioural profiler in behavioural growth, if you like. Basically, we are who we are by the age of 7.
Yes.
It doesn't change after that. It only changes by emotional intelligence and layering. But our core behavior, who we are, is pretty much fundamentally set by that point. It will only change considerably after that if there's massive trauma, losing a loved one at an early age, becoming disabled, losing a limb. It's got to be something of that order to fundamentally change us after 7. Now, I then learn, because I'm pretty, I'm what's called a high D, and I'm a bit of Attila the Hun sometimes. So I learn with emotional intelligence that if I'm full on Mike Greene, I'll offend loads of people, and I won't get what I want.
Yeah.
So I learn to adapt and adjust that, and not be full on Mike unless I really have to be, or unless I'm really under pressure to be. So actually knowing who you want to be, feeling a taste of what you do and don't want, 7 is quite a normal age.
Yeah, so what I've found in my career anyway, in people is yes, you're definitely, by the age of 7, your core side of you is there. I meant the more I knew what I wanted. And a lot of people can't figure out, they might know who they are, but not know how to figure out what they want. So
what did you want at the age of 7?
I wanted to be financially free, which, like I said, as a 7-year-old, you don't normally think that way.
Did you know what that meant back then, or was it more a case of I want the security or free? What?
It was I didn't know the number, because I didn't really know, I wasn't clever enough to know really what the numbers were then, but I knew my financially free was I don't have to work and I can go on holiday tomorrow. Holiday was quite driven here with a family. I needed to be able to afford to take my family on holiday tomorrow when I want to go, and I don't have to work. That was actually, like I said, that's a bit that was weird, the distinct knowledge that that's what that looked like. Most kids or adults don't.
So what did that knowledge, that desire, that knowing do to you? Did it make you want to work to earn money? How did that influence then Charlie from the age of 7?
So like I said, you mentioned a superpower of autism. It did really give me a superpower, because suddenly I'm a kid that knows what they want, but specifically what they want. So I realized over the years when I really struggled, like, eating under a table, for example, that wasn't going to help me if I wanted to become financially free. So I started trying to learn how I could be better at interacting with people. So how I could learn different skill sets. So, in the modern day, mentors are quite well known. Now, rewind 20 years ago, there was always mentors around, but it wasn't as commonly talked about. So I, again, as a kid, realised, well, wait a minute, my uncle George is really good with money. Stingiest guy I've ever met, but really good with money. So he probably won't watch this, but no one used to want to spend time with him. I was the one who did, because I was like, I want to learn what he knows about this. And this is where it gave me a skill set above any other kid I knew around me. My mum and dad had an incredible work ethic. Not always the biggest and best business knowledge, lots of business knowledge, but work ethic. So I used to like to be around them at the market and stuff and learn what they're doing and how they've done it. My auntie, so as a kid, I used to use family members as mentors, which is weird.
Well, again, and it's really important that I'm biased. I mentor a lot of businesses, 40 to 50 at a time. I've mentored thousands. I've had lots of mentors. Part of the reason, probably the primary, if not only reason, we need mentors today is because we're not in such a stable community that used to exist if we went back. So going back a few decades, there was a high likelihood that you would be born, schooled, work, marry, live, die within 10 miles of where you were born.
100%.
Therefore, the community was there and it supported you. You had a neighbour, and if your mum and dad weren't home, you can go in the neighbours. You had an uncle, aunt, and a granddad and a grandmum who was nearby, and they were the mentors.
Yes.
And if our parents were too busy for us, maybe it was Uncle George who had the time for us. The problem is, as time has gone on, people have travelled more people go to university. That often leads them to having a bigger geography, a bigger world, and therefore we're not around so much. But the advent of social media and the internet also meant that I'm less likely to tell them that I'm struggling. I don't want to tell them that I'm scared. I don't want to tell them that I don't know, because we're scared that the world will realise that I'm not confident, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. So we stop talking, we stop sharing, and we don't live in a geography that has a natural mentoring.
Yes. And that's what I think. I think that age, like you said, where, because of what you said, you're absolutely right. But I realised that I wanted to be ahead of everyone. I needed to learn things before them, because academically, on paper, I'm not that clever. I have dyslexia and things. So I know on paper, I'm not that clever. But I do know I've got a photographic memory, and I do know other things that I'm good at. So for me, it was like, no one wanted to spend time with my Uncle George, but I did. And I still am very close to him this day. And it was because, you know, I remember being in his Mercedes. The guy was worth millions back then, I think. I mean, I don't know what he's worth now, probably a lot more. He drove the same Mercedes for God knows how long. And I was in the car with him. I was around 12, 13, and he was like, "Oh, do you know why I drive this slow?" And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Because I don't have to brake that often." So I replaced my brake. I can't remember the dates he said, but I replaced my brakes every X years rather than these. And look, most people think, "Oh, you know," I said it to you earlier before we come on camera about not being the richest man in the graveyard. But I learned so many good skills about money from him over that. So for me, I realised I can learn from people actually around me. And again, as a child, I saw that as an advantage, because I knew most of my friends, most of anyone I knew, all they thought about is what toy they could get tomorrow, or stuff like that. Whereas I used to think that I had to learn things. You know, at 15, I started learning about neuro-linguistic programming of people's brains, because I realized, again, knowing how people will look to take an action, how their body language will read, and lots of the other parts, how your brain, still today I read books about the brain. I love to understand what drives people. You know, I'm not a behavioral coach or anything like that, but I love to know what drives people. And coming back onto the mentor side now, obviously I've done similar things. I mentor people in certain spaces, and gosh, if I knew what I knew now when I was 17, I would have paid me 10 times over, even more. I was still saw the value in it back then, but yeah, it's amazing. So I think that's where it gave me this superpower of realizing, wait a minute, I can't carry on eating underneath for a table. I can't carry on not going to school. I need to have certain things.
So as a kid, let's call it autistic kid, did you know that wasn't normal? I mean, I often think, if when people have these quirks, I always assume that to them it is normal. I mean, dyslexia is another superpower. We had Simon, I wish I could remember his name, I'll put it in the creds, but who wrote The Dyslexic Edge, and and spoke to amazing people who have achieved amazing things, and they all say it's their superpower, one of their superpowers. But to all of them, it was a disability until they reframed it as a different ability, and then reframed it again, or pivoted it again as a superpower. So, but that starts with the knowing. You don't change something until you know it's not normal, or not right, or not optimal. Did you know then this isn't normal?
I definitely, I can't remember how young I remembered, but definitely at a youngish age, I realised I was either very weird or lucky. And I'm a confident guy, so I took it more the lucky side than the weird side. So I knew I was different. Like, even if you think about peer pressures at school, I was fortunate I didn't really get bullied. You know, everyone gets a couple of but I was very self-aware. If you don't if I want to walk down the road fast, I'm only going to put myself in an environment of people that want to walk down the road fast. I never bullied someone. I never went against someone. I never, because you're not in the same group as me. So I realized that was distinctively different to anyone I knew. Because I didn't get fazed by peer pressure. Again, probably that autistic side. But for me, wait a minute, this person has the same family values as me, and they're not an idiot, and they're not going to bully people. So I'll align myself with them. Anyone who didn't want to be destructive or wanted to bully people or moan about people, I didn't socialize. Now that's quite difficult in school.
So you sort of naturally assumed the power of association without realizing that that's what you were doing.
Exactly.
Birds of a feather flock together. You wanted to be around people that were going to give you what you want or be like you, as opposed to people who didn't live the values that.
And I went to main public schools really, so I didn't go into any high education or things like that. So I was aware that, especially North London, there's a lot of gangs, there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of things like that. Even at my age, at 8, there was someone who got stabbed in my school, which is crazy. And I just realised I have a choice. This is where I feel I was lucky. I just knew I had a choice. I either choose to make myself successful. That doesn't mean financially, but just successful as a person, or I go down that route.
So, and to be honest, any one of these areas, I think we could do a whole podcast on.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll do another one. But for the benefit of this being a kind of broader one to start with, I need to keep us moving. But,
Yes.
So let's say 7 to 15, 16, did you have any jobs?
Yeah. I wanted to work as early as I could work.
So what did you do?
I used to work at the market with my mum and dad to start off with, because that was the only place I could get a job as a proper kid. I undercharged. I only used to charge them a timeout bar and a can of Coke, so I regret that. But that was already, I just wanted to work. Even though I didn't realise I wasn't really making anything.
Yeah.
But again, I used to say to my dad, can I do stuff? Like he'd say, well, come and do this and I'll give you this. And I was very much like, even Easter, Christmases, I used to say to my parents, don't give me that Easter egg. Like whatever you were going to spend on an Easter egg, I want the money.
Great.
Because I'm going to save it. This is why my mum used to think I was super weird.
So how much did you save by the time you were 16?
Oh, more than 20k.
All right, wow.
Yeah, more than 20k. So I was very direct. Like, so then I started,
tight, really, as a kid.
Well, this is why I was with George.
This is why I was with George. Aid gratification is.
This is why I was with George all the time, so I could learn how to keep my money. So about 12, I started getting paid jobs, like doing waiting tables, dishwashing. I worked at Iceland supermarkets. Then I say quite lucky. I actually believe in making your own luck somewhat, and I got into an apprenticeship. I knew I wasn't going to do university. Right. Education wasn't for me. I didn't need it for what I wanted to achieve. So I really wanted to get into a company that sort of I could learn a lot of things at.
So I want to come to that in a second, but you were talking about mum and dad earlier.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm always interested in is mum or dad, who was the best influence, the most influence, who did you like most?
Oh, well, now my mum is the number one, but I mean, I was a proper daddy's boy for most of my childhood.
Why?
I don't know, he was the proper alpha male. If you've watched The Godfather, my dad was that of the Greek family in North London.
Yeah.
So for me, he was like seen as the top of the pedestal. He was the boss of everyone.
And interestingly enough, so dad, I mean, look, it's different for everybody. Dad, when you were younger, but you said now it's changed?
Yeah, because I think you realise as a kid, you get distracted by powerful people. You think, oh, they're the real power. But what you realise is my mum and him had equal work ethic. They different skill sets, but my mum was the pillar to really what he achieved. Yeah. And you only start to realise things as you get older.
Well, and it's interesting because I really try as much as possible to get a mix of male, female, and different upbringings on the podcast. And I remember going to see Dame Mary Archer. What a beautiful, stunning, intelligent, like confident woman, and who's achieved amazing things. But literally, right up until we went to her home in Grantchester and met her, I thought, oh, she's Jeffrey Archer's wife, kind of thing. Within minutes, it was really clear that Jeffrey Archer was Mary Archer's husband, in the sense that I honestly, and he was a bit of a rogue in some way, super intelligent, great author.
Yeah.
They thought he'd be like mullered in prison, but he became a superstar because he taught people to read and write. So lovely guy. But I genuinely believe it'd be nothing without her, and I would be without my wife, Jules.
Well, my mum used to be at the market 7 days a week, working all day, every day. Like she used to hang me up on the ceiling with the little kids' bungee things, And so that's what I mean. I think, but just as a child, my dad was a very confident man. Like I said, everyone went to my dad. The whole Greek family went to my dad. So for me, I used to feel again lucky. Like, wow, my dad's like the head of everyone, not just my family. So I think it was that naivety as a child, thinking, well, but actually really my mum, he had a great work ethic, but my mum's work ethic, even today, she works at Red Squirrel with me, because I founded that with her really because I wanted something for her, was the original reason.
Well, and I want to come back to some of those businesses as well, but just to kind of get that point, I mean, a lot of people look to the obvious. So your dad was the biggest influence when you were young, and what I'd say to people is sometimes we say, oh, he's the manager, he's the boss, she's this, she's that. Look beyond the obvious, because often it is I was just thinking, I don't know why it came into my head, but what's the movie where they say manners maketh the man?
I know what movie you're on about.
There's a couple of them, but anyway, I think no one is a leader on their own. They're a leader because of the people that enable them to lead and support them to lead. And I think it's really important that people look beyond the obvious.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, don't get me wrong, I was very close to my mum. My mum was like, again, like I was with her as much as my father, but I think it was just that, you like you said, you naturally as a child, you get distracted by the fun one, the powerful one, the one. But actually, my mum's work ethic, even up to today, I can't bloody retire the lady. I keep trying, she just won't stop. So so the work ethic, again, both parents, probably the Greek family. I didn't know any of my Greek family that didn't have an immaculate work.
I think is the reality. Most men would like to think we work harder. The reality is, around the world, without exception, women work harder than men. And I'm not saying that to win any sort of female vote. It's just a reality. Most men come home, switch off. I've been to some cultures. We've both been to Nepal. We've both traveled India from our conversation earlier. Quite frankly, there are some cultures where men are bloody lazy and expect women to do a lot of the work. But the reality is, to make a successful family, it requires both. They both bring something. A world-class recipe is the combination of ingredients. So it's both. But apprenticeship, you talked about apprenticeship.
Yeah. I like I said, I knew I needed certain skill sets to be successful long term, rather than me think I know it all. So I wanted to be in a company I could learn stuff. And there was this company, I don't know if they still are, I'm assuming they still are. They were Europe's biggest training and mystery shopping company. But they had loads of,
what was the name?
Performance and people. Okay. So at the time they were. And I knew someone that knew someone that worked in the account management team, and they were advertising for an account management administrator, not like an apprentice. Anyway, they got me an interview because I said, I just want interview practice, because I was 15 at the time. So I was like, I want a job at 16, so I want to know what I'm going to experience when I start going. So I got in this job interview because they knew someone. Then they told me I'm not going to get the job. They're just doing it as a favour to so-and-so because they need a bit of more experience, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, they offered me the job in the end. And then, by 17, I was managing a few £1 million worth of accounts with some of the biggest companies there is, Virgins and Homebase, Argos, Mercedes-Benz, General Motors. I was in boardrooms at 17. But the skill set, again, I was focusing more on learning than money at that point, because I realised in this company there was a few really highly skilled people that I could learn I was creating sales processes for Mazda at 17. They were going off what I was saying, Jaguar, some huge. I worked at Virgin Media from 1 store to 190 stores. So I was learning on the job.
So give us a whirlwind, let's say, Charlie, from 17. Give us a whirlwind up to you setting up your own first business. What are the key businesses, jobs, and influences in that gap?
I actually did it alongside because I knew this was never going to be a long-term thing.
Right.
I was earning first year, 200 and something £, £300 a month, so nothing.
Yeah.
But like I said, I was just taking this. I was being around all the most skilled people, learning as much as I could, being in boardrooms, et cetera, et cetera. And then already knew from 7 property was going to be my way to create wealth.
Yeah. Did your parents own property at the time?
They did, but they didn't. It wasn't like a in your face thing. They used to do the whole refurb, buy something, refurb it, move to somewhere else. So I was experiencing it in that way.
But it was always the family home, not an investment.
Yeah. I didn't really know too much about that side, but I just, again, I don't know what made me think property at the first point. So I knew if I could save X amount, but obviously by 16 I already had my first deposit. Yeah. So I needed to wait 2 years to buy something. So my job was there, just keep learning, because property was going to create my wealth. So my first business was property, portfolio and management and stuff like that. So I bought, the day I turned 18, I bought my first place. I already offered before. So I bought that, and then I was very set.
What was that? Was it a doer-upper? Was it already good?
No, it's actually my worst investment I've ever done. Talk about mentorship and whatever. I wish I paid me back then to help me, but I still own it though. It was actually just a 1-bedroom flat. I was just so keen to buy. I didn't really understand anything about leveraging and any of the other skill sets. I just wanted to do. I am a bit of a doer. If I say I'm going to go and do this tomorrow, I'll go and do it. So for me, it was then. I've just learned on the job really as the years went on. And so I use my income from the work to help serve my property investments. So I was quite aggressive really with the property side, very aggressive straight away. How much could I save? Who could I borrow from? Where could I get this from? What could I do that?
So did you ever have any property training at that point?
No.
Or was it just like buy, do, sell?
Yeah, like I said, I had no training.
Right.
It was weird because everything else in my life from the age of 7, work, I always wanted to learn. I wanted to be with people who could teach you stuff. For some reason, probably because the job I was doing got to my head somewhat, suddenly I was doing a really, really big job for someone very young.
And I asked that as a loaded question, really, because one of the things I read about you, one of the things I would say to anybody listening is chat is a great place to check the credibility and bullshit factor of people.
Yeah.
And, there are some great property people out there, I mean, who have got really good ethics and morals. And one of my mentee companies is Debbie Does Property, Debbie and Jeff.
Okay.
They're great guys. But there's a load of bullshitters out there. There are people who tell you they're a zillionaire and they're worth fuck all.
Yes.
And they'll be teaching property when they've maybe don't own a property, when they've never made money from property, and so on. But it actually, when you profile you and you ask those awkward questions, tell me what isn't self-promoted content.
Yeah.
And it says you're a very values-driven.
If anything, that's held me back financially. Where I was I wasn't money-driven. I was freedom-driven. Money's never been most of my wealth was created by the age of 21. To be honest, since then, yes, my wealth has increased, but not substantially because it's never really been my drive. I've done a lot of philanthropy and things like that. But yeah, no, you're correct. Especially the last 6 years, Instagram has provided a lot of those property experts who've never done anything in property in their lives, but they're good at marketing themselves. So yeah, I do agree. There's a big problem in that. But no, I didn't know anything. In hindsight, my uncle knows a hell of a lot. So since those days, even a few years ago, I phoned him and said, "Oh, where are you investing at the moment, George? Because I want to know what other people are doing now." So because I like to look at market trends in Europe and worldwide. But back then, I think because of the job I got, it's hard not to let that go to your head somewhat. It's being honest. I was in boardrooms. I was managing millions of pounds, and I was having jollies with directors of some of the biggest companies in the world at 17.
Brilliant.
I mean, they thought I was older, I think, but so I think I was pretty ignorant. I was like, well, wait a minute, I've got this money.
Positively naive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got this money. I've made this money. So I know I'm going to spend this money. That was my attitude at 17.
Yeah.
So my first...
For the benefit of people who don't know Charlie Panayi, give us a bit of a summary of what it is you do now, and then we'll fill in the gap.
Yeah. So what do I do now? Blimey. So I buy businesses.
Yep.
And property.
What sort of businesses?
I'm a little bit like a kid in a candy shop. I'm focusing at the moment on professional services and certain tech related stuff. But to be honest, if there's an opportunity of growth there,
Sweet spot of price. What do you?
I like more than 500,000, under 5 million. Because we come back to the property development world, there was a huge opportunity where big developers want hundreds of houses, thousands of houses. They don't want to get involved in 6, 7, 8 houses, but actually there's still a lot of profit in 6, 7, 8 houses, or even one potentially. I'm happy with that. So there's a huge opportunity because the big players don't want it. The run of the mill people can't do it. So then as the years went on in property, I started to think, well, I've helped some huge international companies over the years. And obviously I naturally ended up mentoring friends and things like that and people that knew me in business. I thought, wait a minute, if there's an opportunity in this space in property, there must be the opportunity in that space in business. And there absolutely is. big companies want to buy big companies. They don't really want to buy a company that turns over less than 5 mil because of the infrastructure, the professionalism.
Where do you find them? How do you fund them? And what are the things you look for?
Again, from some of my learnings, if I could rewind to 17, I would have started my property journey very differently. I'm sure everyone who's listening to this in their own career would say the same thing. I learned a lot about leveraging. So for me, how do I find them? There's specific companies I'm quite interested in. I will reach out directly. I will look for those companies, but obviously that's quite time consuming. But certain areas like property world, I'm quite interested. I'm quite interested in aesthetics because I've got some ideas on long-term projections. Also with my sister dying, some correlation to skin-related stuff I want to work with. So some I will proactively reach because, sorry, any brokers listening, but they're some of the worst things people think estate agents are bad. To do a business brokers, wow, there's a whole different level. So I'm sorry, there is good ones out there. But so yes, very direct. But then I will use brokers as well. It's not, you can't say you can't use brokers. Like, I've got to deal with it. How do we fund it? Lots of different ways. You know, a lot of the time, the deal can be right. I can do no money down purchases.
No money down by giving them maybe more of a price, but giving them the freedom, giving them some money now, but more money later.
I tend to try and give them 50% up front, but that 50%, what people don't realise, will come from the business.
Right.
So the business pays for them.
Explain that.
So let's say...
It's free cash in the business, is it, or available cash?
Or you can lend against it. So if you've got a group or you've got a good enough background, say, in business, banks will lend on you. It's not like property. With property, how much is this property worth? I'm willing to give you 75% of that value as long as X, Y, Z. In business acquisition, they look at you. How have you scaled companies before? What can you do? What can you bring to the table? Then they look at the books, obviously. So there's one I'm looking at the moment that's just short of £1 million turnover. Great EBITDA. I won't go into that's a bit of a boring conversation to go into here, but I look at the EBITDA, the numbers, the profit, where they're spending their money. How can I not cut costs, but how can I change how they're spending and pivot that and scale it? By doing that, I can then go to banks, investors, and stuff. Because obviously I have my own money, but same in property. What I realise is I can win for lots of different parties here rather than me use my money. I'd rather keep my money. I used to use all of my money. The first 12 properties I bought were all my own money.
The same. I never put more than 5% of my own money into anything that I do.
But I never knew that younger. But obviously nowadays, I realise, so I use investors and or banks. Certain banks will front me up entirely because they trust me. Other times I have to go to investors and say, right, you come on this, I'll offer you X% or triple your money on the sale or whatever terms, they're all different. And then what you can use is that £1 million turnover, because the bank likes the profit margins, they'll say, okay, yeah, I'll give you 50%. So then you can go to the owner.
And do you give PGs against that as well? I mean, some people are scared of PGs, but I think you've got to show your commitment. I mean, I wouldn't if I didn't have to, but you know, I'd be willing to.
I try at all costs to avoid it because I just don't want to. But I understand also if I have to, I'll have to. If I believe in the business I'm buying, then I'll do it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I try to find ways not to. So yeah, using that scenario of that one just short of a mil, they're really hard to sell. Businesses under 5 million.
What's the EBITDA on it?
That's about 220k.
And what would you be looking to buy?
Well, it depends on the industry, depends on I don't want to say I go for 1.5 times EBITDA because in certain industries like tech we'll go 7 times. So it depends on what the industry is. But this one is more of a 2.5 times sort of EBITDA. What people don't realise, it's really hard to sell businesses under 5 mil because the big players don't want it. The run-of-the-mill person can't do it.
And often they're so dependent on one individual.
So I'm in power.
Yeah.
So I know this sounds harsh, but the buyer has the power in these negotiations. But I like to make a fair deal. Same come back to the values. I'm very value driven. If I wasn't, I'd probably be wealthier. So I want to make a deal that works for both parties. I'll tell you what, look, I'm going to give you what you really want, even though it's not worth it, but you're going to do it my structure. I'll give you 50% down up front and the rest is paid out over 1, 2, 3, 4.
Subject to certain levels of achievement. People really hang themselves in business because they say, oh, we're in growth and we're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do this. Oh, right. How confident are you that that's where the business is going? Oh, definitely going to do it. Okay. And then you can say, okay, we'll have an earn out then. But if you don't hit that, I get it for the money I first started with.
Yeah. But this is a problem. And I think they don't realize how hard it is to sell as well. So they've got all these projections, but
So I agree with you. So for instance, if I look at property or I look at business, and they're mostly property, but I've bought several and sold businesses, but mostly on property these days. But I always look for one that's been on the market a long time. Either I want an off-market deal that is so right for me that I want to beat other people to it, and there's a planning uplift or something, or I'll go for one that nobody else has bought because I know they then can't argue that it's worth what they're saying it's worth.
So what's the beauty? So this is where probably my background of I am very value led. Like I said, it works in my favour because you're right. But also most of these sub 5 million but businesses are still the original founder is part of it. So they live and breathe it. So what I've actually managed to get really good deals over the years because last year we agreed one on a software company. They agreed to sell it to me for 175k less because they liked me. Yeah. Because they believed in what I would do with the business and because they didn't want to sell it to someone that's going to...
I agree. And often they're so emotionally attached that it's their baby. They don't want someone managing it or taking it that's going to treat it bad, treat the people bad.
Exactly. They've given their blood, sweat and tears. I've started a business and so have you. It is blood, sweat and tears to get anything off the ground. So the relationships are really important, but obviously if they're on the market too early, brokers mislead them because brokers charge most of their fee up front. So they give them all the flowers and fluff they need. And then they start to realise selling anything sub 5 mil is really hard because there's not that many buyers really compared to the big players. Yeah. And obviously what I'm good at is I've got friends in different spaces. So we're good at professionalising companies. There's one that me and my friend were involved in. I'm not allowed because of an NDA to name the company, but just before COVID. And they bought a company and all we did was professionalise it. So they bought it for around 18 million. All we did was professionalise it, company procedures, policies and procedures, etc. And it resold because of those little things that we restructured through the company. It resold for 78 million. Wow. What people don't realise when I go and buy a £1 million business is I probably know how to change that quite easily. Obviously, if you go too low, it's hard because like you mentioned already, I don't want to buy a job. Yeah. I want to buy someone that has a management company or I can put someone I know in. So it's really important to do it right, but that's really, so I do that, I buy property, I mentor people, I do all sorts of things.
So on that, because believe it or not, we've probably been going about 45 minutes. Time goes really quickly. And there is a limit to which we can keep everyone's attention, but we can come back and do another podcast on a specific subject. But of your net worth, and I don't need to go into it, but give me an idea of this much is 10%, and not the amount, but business is 20%, property is 50%, mentoring is 30%. What sectors are you in, and what proportion of your net worth and time do they take up?
Obviously, asset-wise, most of it's property. I'd probably say 70% is property, maybe more, to be fair. It's hard to know without looking at it properly. Because obviously, as you know, with businesses, it's swings and roundabouts, what technical values are. Cash flow, contradict to 70% here, cash flow comes hugely from business. Yeah. Business is what buys me my assets. I look at it differently to most investors or economists or whatever you want to call it. The properties are my assets. They give me a cash flow and income, but they're my assets. Business is my cash flow. Yeah. So I'd say at least 70% property. The rest, probably 20% business, and then 10% sort of mentoring, consultancy, simplifying it.
Within the property, where do you keep yourself leveraged? 60-40, 70-30, 50-50? What do you aim? Because, I've always understood, going bankrupt 33 years ago, becoming homeless, and then, understanding importance of cash, people would think you wouldn't want to get into debt again. But actually, I've always understood the value of using debt. So tell me, within your property portfolio, what would be the debt to value ratio?
So again, probably coming from my autistic side here, I have one portfolio that will be cash only by 3 years' time. It's on a repayment. The reason I looked at that portfolio as that one is because I wanted one portfolio that is my retirement fund.
Right.
The rest I will stay 75% leveraged. That is it. Everything else will be 75% leveraged. So there's there's probably only worth around 1.5 million that portfolio as we speak today. But I wanted to know that I've got a bunch of properties that are cash free. They are my retirement if anything goes wrong.
And as a guide, I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, this is worth 500,000. It's worth 1 million." And I always say, when it comes to property, if you would like to sell and you're not in a rush, you may get that.
Yes.
If you're desperate to sell, I've never paid more than 80% of a property value for a property.
As an investor.
At this moment in time, I can tell people we're always looking in, we're looking out. If someone's buying, say, more than 5 or 10 properties, they're going to expect 20 to 25% discount to market.
As an investor will, yeah.
Yeah, an investor will. So you've got to always look at what you're going to put it at to the market to get leveraged finance, but you've always got to be very aware of, if shit hit the fan, what would I have to take a bath on to get rid of it? And having worked a fair bit with Alfie Best, one of the things he says is, if it's not working for you, sell it below market, get it gone while you can before you're chasing the value down.
Yeah. I mean, this is where most investors who I work with in the property sector they might do a lot of property related investment, but they don't really understand that side. I see it so many times where they're doing a reconversion or new builds and they're saying, yeah, I'm going to get 500,000 for this. But you're not. For me, I always base it on worst case. What is the worst case scenario at the end of this? So anything else is a benefit.
Because that's the only reality. Everything is an isolate.
That's it. And anything else is a benefit. So when all the mortgage rates changed, obviously, time's disappearing now, 3 years ago, none of my investors were bothered, because from the day I worked with them originally, I always said, I'm basing this investment on an 8% interest rate. And that back then they were like, but we're borrowing at 0.9% or whatever. Don't care.
So our investors wasn't mullered when...
No, so when it changed, don't get me wrong, I didn't like it. I had to refinance probably £2 million to more than double what I was paying, but I still make money. None of us like it. Yeah. But the reality was we based it on worst case scenario.
Well, and the worst thing, of course, refinance, belt and brace, suck it up, because one of the things that my business partner in property, Spencer, says is property gets sick, but it never dies. If you look back to 1930, with the Great Depression, property dropped 70%. In some of the big recessions and depressions since, it drops 20-30%, but never more than 30%. And actually within 5 years, it always came back stronger. So the worst thing you can do is bloody sell it.
Yeah.
If you can afford to keep it.
So yeah, and obviously in the property world, I am classed as an expert. So the last 200 years, the longest it's ever taken equity value to double is 14 years. So as long as you're investing from a medium to long term, you don't lose in property.
Yeah,
it's medium to long. I'm saying don't lose unless you structure.
The worst thing you can do is sell it in a panic.
Yeah, but people do, and then in 2019 I'd done a talk, property investment talk somewhere, and there's a couple hundred people in the room, and I said in that room, I didn't know COVID was coming, but I knew Brexit was coming, and I said it's documented, it's on video somewhere. Buy now. I was in this room in front of 200 people saying, you need to buy now, you will regret not buying.
So Warren Buffett, buy when it's low, sell when it's high.
But people who listened to me that day still buy me beers and drinks and all that now, because they couldn't believe that, I didn't have a crystal ball. It was an educated suggestion. The ones who didn't listen, they've cost themselves hundreds of thousands.
And it sounds like one of the things we have in common is that research thing. I built a research business here, America, Australia, New Zealand, 18 European countries with a partner called Tom. And because of that, so many years, we were tracking changing consumer habits and shopping habits and things like that. But the fact was we were researchers. So as I got more and more into property, I did exactly that. Went back 100 years, you went back 200 years, same thing. It shrinks and grows, shrinks and grows. No different to the share price graph of Apple. Trend always upwards, but fuck me, it's up and down like a horse draws. It's unstoppable in that regard. But we could easily talk for ages. I'm sure we'll do another podcast, but for the benefit of viewers, if they wanted to get hold of you, how do they do that? And if there was one, I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Yeah.
One passion point for life, what is it? I think earlier you said you wanted to die with memories or something like that. So tell us what that is. And if you were speaking to your 17-year-old self and would do anything differently, what would it be?
So the passion very much is like I said to you earlier, is I lived by it from the age of 7 about dying with memories, not dreams. I don't think I made up that saying, but I used to say it as a child. And I absolutely have lived by that. You know, I like to travel the world. I like to experience things. I did 14 challenges in 10 months a couple of years ago, where I'd done some of the hardest challenges anyone will do in the world. And I'm all about experiences. For me, that's my drive. Money is to generate experiences, not financial wealth. It's all about freedom. That's my passion. And my son, when I saw Otis when he was born, I know loads of parents probably say this, but it completely changed me.
Yeah.
Like completely, like in terms of like I just fell in love. So, like I've never felt anything like it. So those are my two passions: is Otis and experiences. Conflicting, because I want to see Otis and I want to go there. So we have
Got to be old enough soon to take with you.
Well, I keep telling him he's coming up a mountain with me soon, and he's like, "No, I'm not. I'm not a big boy."
Mountains another time. I've done lots of mountains.
Yeah, he's not a big boy, is what he says. And then going back to 17, genuinely, it would have been more education, because, like I said, the decisions I made in
Academic or experiential?
No, not academic. If I'm honest, the UK government only teaches you how to be controlled. So I don't believe in run-of-the-mill UK.
Actually, do a whole podcast on that.
Yeah. So that's the fundamental issue in the UK there. But no, it was more education around from people. So I think if we go back to the property one as an example,
Of development.
yeah. If you think, I work with a guy called Joe. I've worked with loads of guys, but I just think recently we still work together actually. But what I showed him how to do in 4 months took me 10 years in property. So if I could turn back to 17 and talk to a mentor, just reached out to someone who's somewhere I wanted to. My uncle probably would have been the perfect. But why I was so ignorant at the time, I don't know. But my uncle probably would have been the perfect person at the time. I would have said, uncle, friend, family, mentor, whoever, here's 12 grand. Teach me what to bloody do. Yeah. Like rather than, so I don't make the mistakes I learned.
I know Selby didn't end on that, but there's always one more question. Yeah. What is it that you taught or told Joe that did it so quickly compared to your story?
What
was the key biggest principle?
It's more how to leverage your money. Really was a key bit. I mean, it's a lot more detailed than that, but simplified version is how to leverage and how to actually understand an investment case, rather than just saying, there's a property, there's a bricks and mortar, that's below market value, I'll buy it. Because he still today, I have to tell him off every day. This guy still works for me, sends me stuff. I'm like, no. I've taught you better now. But people get a bit gun happy, you know. They're like, oh yeah, well that's 20% but what's the strategy? What's the long-term plan? What's the aim? What's the cash flow? Blah. So for me, I just taught him a lot of that stuff and how to leverage his money and make his portfolio worth with a quarter of his money over £1 million without even spending it.
Yeah.
And that's what I just didn't know, which actually I did have people on my doorstep I could have, which from the age of 7 till 15, well, even 17 in work education, but I was always wanting to learn. And it was just a bit ignorant, really. So if I could turn back time and think, like, gosh, if someone, and 12 grand then probably would have been a lot more money than it is today, I still would have paid that.
No, and I remember spending 15 grand probably 30 years ago or 28 years ago on doing Tony Robbins Mastery University. I borrowed it on 5 credit cards. I couldn't afford it. I mean, you could say it was fucking stupid because it was only about 4 years after we'd been bankrupt. But I just knew that you know, what's the saying? I saw further by standing on the shoulders of giants. 100%. He was a giant. He'd sold his business, or not sold it, he'd floated it. It's worth 400 million, bought a fucking island in Fiji, from being a broke salesman in New York. And I thought, this guy can teach me some shit.
Oh, yeah, he was phenomenal.
He was world class. But listen, thanks for your time, Charlie.
It's all right.
It's been a whirlwind. We could talk for hours. Time has gone beyond us, but
yes,
thank you for your time. Where can people find you?
The best place is probably my Instagram or LinkedIn if they want to find me, Charlie Panayi. Nice
and that's spelled Panayi.
AYI.
Yeah, perfectly. Listen, I hope you've enjoyed hearing Charlie as much as I've enjoyed speaking to him. If you have enjoyed it, found it useful, learned something, please share, like, subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you again on another episode of Success is a System.